That it's streaming. Good evening.
Good evening.
There we go. Okay, so I have my tentative schedule, which before anyone points out, Lester has already beaten you to it. We're not having a Sunday night next week. So it completely, threw everything off, but we just bumped that to the Sunday night after that, which would be like the 2nd of June. So I guess we'll do on the 29th would be chapter 11, and then the 2nd of June we'll do chapter 12. And then from the 5th of June down, hopefully we will stick to this unless something else comes up that I'm unaware of. But basically what happened all of this out, because I'm only sticking around until the end of July. And I was like, okay, if, the way things are going, I'm only going to have 4 weeks left, which isn't really enough time to do anything because there's not really any books with 4 chapters. So I'd have to really cram stuff in, and I don't want to do that. Or I would just do half of a book. I don't want to do that because then I just leave on a cliffhanger. And so I called Lester. I was like, well, okay, just let me go ahead and do Sunday night. And then I'll have 5 weeks at the end. And then I can do something with 5 chapters, which would be James. So anyway, this is all tentative. And as I've already pointed out, it can change, as it already has, before we've even made it out of chapter 10. But that at least gives you an idea of, kind of sort of where we're at and where we're headed. But we're in chapter 10 of Hosea before, we get too ahead of ourselves. And this is a very complex chapter. I don't know that it's complex in and of itself, but the way that I'm approaching it is kind of complex. If you'll notice, this should look exactly like your copy. So I have 3 sets of papers this week. I have my notes. I have a key with all of the answers, which is just your copy, but instead of the fill in the blank, it just has it answered. And then I have your copy, which has the blanks and stuff. Your copy should have 2 pages of stuff, notes and stuff. And then the last 2 pages should be maps. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time dissecting geography, but that is relevant to what we're talking about a little bit. And I thought, well, that will help you visualize some of this stuff more so than me just talking about it. So, when we get to that point, if you want, flip there. And after the study, if you review this, or if you're ever in Hosea in your own Bible study and you're looking at these places and you're like, where are these places or what's going on? You can return to that. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time with that, but I did throw it in there for you. As has already been said by multiple people now, we do have Hebrew. Just as the last time that I decided bringing up Hebrew was a good idea, I don't expect you to actually read this necessarily. I don't expect you to, be able to translate this or know what this means. Actually, this week is very easy. It's just pattern recognition. That's the only thing that I'm concerned about. And I have literally even highlighted in red the parts of the word that are similar. So you should be able to look at this and go, oh, I see. We got a thing that looks like a backwards Y, a thing that looks like a backwards R, and a thing that looks like a backwards P. And we see that in these 3 different words. That's the only reason why I bring that up. So don't, think I'm going to have you parsing the Hebrew alphabet or something. No worries there. Anyway, we're going to actually break up the chapter tonight, which I haven't done a whole lot of lately. Apparently, when I was transferring all this from my notes to the student copy and my key, the 6 got cut off. So the first section is Hosea chapter 10, verses 1 through 6. And then I think on your copy it should have 7 through 15. Yeah, it does. 7 through 15 is the rest, which is kind of weird because now that I'm looking at my copy, the 15 got cut off. On your copy, the 6 got cut off, and on my copy, the 15 got cut off, so I don't know. But we're going to start with the first 6 verses. Hosea chapter 10, starting in verse 1. Israel empties his vine. He brings forth fruit for himself according to the multitude of his fruit. He has increased the altars according to the bounty of his land. They have embellished his sacred pillars. Their heart is divided. Now they are held guilty. He will break down their he will break down their altars. He will ruin their sacred pillars. For now they say, we have no king, because we did not fear the Lord. And as for a king, what would he do for us? They have spoken words, swearing falsely and making a covenant. Thus judgment springs up like hemlock in the furrows of the field. The inhabitants of Samaria fear because of the calf of Beth-aven, for its people mourn for it, and its priests shriek for it, because its glory has departed from it. The idol also shall be carried to Assyria as a present for King Jareb. Ephraim shall receive shame, and Israel shall be ashamed of his own counsel. So, yeah, we're not exactly covering every single verse. I don't know that I've ever covered like every single verse. So, going straight to verse 2, that's the first thing we got. I will say that, we see a lot of the same stuff here that we've seen before. Prophetic literature, minor prophets, they repeat themselves a lot. Just like we got thick scrolls sometimes, they did too back then. A lot of repetition. The kings, they're going to be cut off, they're going to be killed. We've seen that before. Even the whole bull of Samaria thing, we've seen that before. A lot of the punishment stuff is kind of similar, but there's a lot of stuff that is unique to this chapter, and that's kind of what we're going to focus on. So, verse 2, it says, their heart is divided. Now they are held guilty. He will break down their altars. Okay. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the Hebrew thing, so you're probably thankful for that. But you can see that the word in Hosea 10:2, he will break down. It's got that backwards Y, an ayin, a backwards R, a resh, and a backwards P, a pei. Okay, those are the consonants. Because remember, all the vowels in Hebrew, it's those weird little dot things above and below. So that is basically the root word. He will break down. And we see forms of the same word elsewhere. Exodus 13, verse 13. This same command is also seen in Exodus 34:20, and it's the same word there as well. But just 13:13. Redeem with the lamb every firstborn donkey, but if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Okay, so he will break down that, backwards Y, backwards R, backwards P. That's in the same, that's the same root word making up break its neck. Okay, talking about making sacrifices, that sort of thing. We also see this in Deuteronomy 21, verses 1 through 4, sort of the, redemption price. It says, if someone is found slain, lying in a field in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess, and it is not known who the killer was, your elders and judges shall go out and measure the distance from the body to the neighboring towns. And the elders of the town nearest the body shall take a heifer that has never been worked and has never worn a yoke, and lead it to a valley that has not been plowed or planted, and where there is a flowing stream. There in the valley they are to break the heifer's neck. Once again, the root word making that up is backwards Y, backwards R, and the backwards P. Ayin, resh, pei. So it's the same word. Sacrifices, offerings to God, as what is said in Hosea 10:2, God, will break down their altars. So instead of Israel continuing to break the necks of animals in sacrifices to idols. Because if you remember, right, we got all of the religious syncretism. We've got all of these, Jeroboam's altars all over the northern kingdom. Right. So instead of Israel continuing to break the neck of animals in sacrifice to idols, God is going to break the neck of Israel's adulterous altars. Right. So the altar is kind of, being sacrificed, which is weird to think about. Right. And it like I said, it is sort of like the same punishment we've seen before. We've read in the last 9 chapters, y'all got, your cows and you've got your altars and your high places and your shrines, and I'm going to destroy them. But what's unique here is the language that's being used. Israel, right, they're making these sacrifices to pagan gods on these altars, on these shrines, and now God promises to sacrifice or destroy the altars that Israel is using for these pagan practices. Kind of cool, I think. Moving on to verse 3. Hosea 10, verse 3. For now they say, we have no king, because we did not fear the Lord. And as for a king, what would he do for us? So I kind of color-coded this. Let me, it's still on the same page. So I've kind of color-coded this for you a little bit because I want to pull out some stuff. So comparing this to 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 19 and 20. Okay. Hosea, it says, right, we have no king. 1 Samuel 8, chapter 8, that's all about the people coming up and saying, we want a king, right? Hosea chapter 10, verse 3, what would he do for us, right? We want a king, we have no king. What would he even do for us if we did have one? 1 Samuel, we want a king, and what he'll do for us is lead us and go out before us and fight our battles. So you see, how, but a few centuries, how Israel has done a complete 180 from what they're asking in Samuel to what they're, soon to be proclaiming in the time of Hosea. Their original plea for a king that would lead them into battle and guide them, that's going to turn into a stance of opposition against the king because they don't believe the king is going to be able to help them, right? As for a king, what would he do for us? Ironically, the prophecies in chapter 10 about the end of the monarchy kind of prove their point, right? Verse 7 of chapter 10, as for Samaria, her king is cut off like a twig on the water. Verse 15 of chapter 10, and it shall be done to you, O Bethel, because of your great wickedness, at dawn, the king of Israel shall be cut off entirely, right? So if the king of Israel is cut off, he's not going to be able to do anything to prevent the exile and the destruction and all of the mayhem being caused by Assyria, right? He's not going to be able to, how did they phrase it in Samuel? He's not going to be able to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles, right? No, because the king's going to be cut off. So, the prophecies here kind of actually prove these people's point, which is funny. Going on into verse 10. So Hosea 10, 5. The inhabitants of Samaria fear because of the calf of Beth Aven, for its people mourn for it, and its priests shriek for it, because its glory has departed from it. So, I gave you some more Hebrew stuff. No need to worry. Once again, it's all just pattern recognition. So we have Hosea chapter 10, verse 5. Its glory has departed, that verb. You see, we got, an upside down Y. And, when I was in Hebrew class, my professor described it as kind of like a toilet with the lid up. And that's what it looks like, right? An upside down Y and a toilet with the seat up, and that's sort of the root word here that we're tracking this time. We see this word as well in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 13. Therefore, my people will go into exile. That verb, it's the same thing. We got the upside down Y, the weird, thing, and I don't know, kind of looks like a house or something. I don't know. It's actually the exact same word. I mean, it's even has the same, or almost the same anyway, vowels and everything, as the usage in Hosea 10:5. If you'll notice, right, Hosea, it's departed. Isaiah, it's will go into exile. 2 Kings 25, verses 20 and 21. Zeradan, the commander, took them all and brought them to the king of Babylon at Riblah. There at Riblah in the land of Hamath, the king had them executed. So Judah went into captivity. Okay. So again, we have kind of looks like an I, and then, not even going to try to explain that thing. And then the upside down Y and, the toilet looking simple. So again, went into captivity or went into exile. A little bit different than how we have it translated in Hosea 10:5 as departed. Same thing with 1 Chronicles 5:26. It's also, you can see the same root word there, and it's translated into exile. So what is the significance of all this? Why am I bringing this up? Well, Israel's most prominent idol, right? You remember in that account in, 2 Kings, of Jeroboam establishing the two golden calves, Samaria and Bethel, I think. And, I don't want my people to go to Jerusalem. That's too far. And if they go, they might want to reconnect with the northern kingdom and they might kill me. We'll just set up our own Jerusalem. We'll set up our own altars, all that, right? So their most prominent idol, the golden calves of Jeroboam II, right? They're prophesied. It's prophesied that they're going to be carried off into exile, right, along with the people. It's not just, the calf of Beth Aven. It's people mourn for it, the priests shriek for it because its glory has departed, but its glory has gone into captivity, has went into exile. However you want to translate that, right? And this is your first fill in the blank, finally. We're 20 minutes into this. Earlier, we saw the prophet describing the pagan altars. We saw the prophet describing the pagan altars being destroyed with the same language used to describe the sacrifices of true worship. So pagan altars and then sacrifices. Now, in verse 5, we see the prophet describe the golden calf of Bethel departing with the same language used to describe the exile of humans, right? Verse 2, I'm going to, break the neck, basically, of their altars, and I'm going to ruin their sacred pillars, right? Same language used to describe sacrifices, even sacrifice of true worship to God, right? In verse 5, we see the prophet describing, the golden calf of Bethel, it's going to depart or it's going to be exiled, right? Same language used to describe the exile of humans, right? So to exile is to be banished from the land. So God is quite literally banishing from the land of Israel not only the people who have sinned, but the instruments with which they sinned. At least some of them anyway. The golden calves, the golden bulls of Jeroboam II. Again, kind of cool, I think. And it gets even cooler because this, glory has departed or has gone into exile, whatever, is also reminiscent of 1 Samuel chapter 4, verses 21 and 22. 1 Samuel chapter 4, verses 21 and 22. Phineas or Phineas, however you want to pronounce that, his wife says, his wife did, name the boy Ichabod, and then says, for the glory has departed from Israel. Where have we seen the has departed before? Well, we've seen it in Hosea, right? The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured, right? This is when the Philistines captured the ark. What's the significance of this? Well, let's recap, right? We got the prophet describing the pagan altars. They're going to be destroyed using the same language used to describe sacrifices of true worship. Okay, we got that. The prophet, he describes the golden calf of Bethel departing or exiling, right? Same language used to describe the exile of the Israelites, right? But now, right, or in the same verse, right, he uses the same language to describe the pagan gods themselves being exiled or cast out of Israel, using the same language that has been used to describe Yahweh's presence departing Israel when the Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant, right? And this makes sense because think about, we talked about last week what the golden, I think it was last week, what the golden calves were actually supposed to represent, right? Likely both Jeroboam's and the ones that, Aaron made, were not gods unto themselves, right? But rather kind of like how the Ark of the Covenant is not God. It's supposed to be the dwelling place of God. That's probably what the golden calves were as well. We see this in a lot of pagan cultures of the time, right? Their gods were seen riding a cow or on the back of a bull or something like that. So that's probably the idea of the golden calves of Jeroboam as well, which also makes sense given all the other, religious syncretism. A little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we'll mix it together and see what pops up. So we have, right, the golden calf is basically a knockoff Ark of the Covenant where, okay, we build this calf and, we can somehow summon the presence of God, right? Well, and this is your fill in the blank. Just as previously, when the Ark of the Covenant was exiled, in little quotes, of course, by the Philistines, God's presence departed from Israel. So, just as previously, the ark was exiled by the Philistines, God's presence departed from Israel. It's the same two words for the last two fill in the blanks. The bull of Jeroboam will be exiled by the Assyrians, which I misspelled, will be exiled by the Assyrians, and the presence of any false gods will depart from Israel. Pretty cool, right? I think. Very, complex. There's a lot of moving parts here, but, hopefully all of that made sense, right? God's presence was, departing Israel when the Philistines exiled the Ark of the Covenant, or, vanished it from Israel back to Philistia. And now it's being prophesied, right, that the presence of these false gods, Baal, Asherah, whatever, right, they're going to depart as well when, right, the object used to summon them, or the object where they would, reside, would be exiled. So, anyway, moving on into the last half of the chapter. We'll pick back up reading in verse 7 through the end of the chapter. As for Samaria, her king is cut off like a twig on the water. Also, the high places of Avon, the sin of Israel, shall be destroyed. The thorn and thistle shall grow on their altars. They shall say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. O Israel, you have sinned from the days of Gibeah. There they stood, the battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity. There they stood. The battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity did not overtake them. When it is my desire, I will chasten them. The people shall be gathered against them when I bind them for their two transgressions. Ephraim is a trained heifer that loves to thresh grain. But I harnessed her fair neck. I will make Ephraim pull a plow. Judah shall plow. Jacob shall break his clods. Sow for yourself righteousness, reap in mercy. Break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord, till he comes and rains righteousness on you. You have plowed wickedness, you have reaped iniquity, you have eaten the fruit of lies, because you trusted in your own ways, in the multitude of your mighty men. Therefore tumult shall arise among your people, and all your fortresses shall be plundered. As Shalman plundered Beth Arbel in the day of battle, a mother dashed in pieces upon her children. Thus it shall be done to you, O Bethel, because of your great wickedness. At dawn the king of Israel shall be cut off utterly. Okay, so again, not hitting every verse necessarily, and we are skipping quite a few in this section. But let's look at verse 8. So, this one's a lot simpler on me, going between all of my notes and your handout, because there's not a whole bunch of Greek or Hebrew stuff scattered everywhere. So I think that this will be a lot more smooth for me and for you. But verse 8, let me reread that again. Also the high places of Avon, the sin of Israel, shall be destroyed. The thorn and thistle shall grow on their altars. They shall say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. So the king of Israel and the high places and the altars of Israel, it's told, they're going to be cut off, they're going to be destroyed, and that's going to leave the common folk wanting to die. They're going to be wishing death upon themselves, right? Talked a lot about in the Minor Prophets, top-down problem, right? The kings, the priests, they're corrupt, and then it trickles its way down, and the people become corrupt. Here, you kind of have a top-down judgment, which you also see a lot in the Minor Prophets, right? The king of Israel, right? Verse 6, verse 7, the king is cut off. And then the altars in the high places, the places of worship, right? Verse 8, first half shall be destroyed. Verse 8, second half, the common folk, they're going to be wishing for death. They're going to say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us, right? And obviously, we've seen this before. First, let me back up this. I had this in my notes originally, then I took it out. And I'm going to reference it, but not go nearly as in-depth as I was going to originally. But backing up a little bit, you have in that whole covenantal curses thing that we got a lot into last week, right? One of them is just like total mental chaos, right? Like, I want to, when it's morning, you're going to wish for evening. When it's evening, you're going to wish for morning. And just like complete chaos. Very similar to like, the complete mental chaos of like, asking a mountain to fall down on top of you and kill you. So you see that. And then this is picked up in the New Testament in a couple places. So you have Jesus on his way to be crucified, says, right, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves, because, there's going to be pregnant women, and they're going to, and he actually quotes Hosea, right? They're going to ask the mountains to cover us and the hills to fall on us, right? And I mean, depending on how you interpret that, I mean, that could be anything from like the end of times to like the destruction of Jerusalem circa 70 AD. Not relevant. You also have this in Revelation, of course. This is probably the one we're most familiar with. Revelation 6, I want to say. Like I said, I had all this written down and I kind of took it out. And you see this picked up as well. So this is language that kind of has some roots in the covenantal curses a little bit. This whole like basically going insane concept because of all the judgment of God happening around you really gets developed in Hosea, and then that language in Hosea gets picked up by Jesus, and then John in Revelation. And so this was quite a popular way of describing, when judgment's coming, right? Y'all are going to lose your mind. Y'all are going to flip your lid. And it became kind of a popular saying of the times. So what's really important, though, is that both Bethel and Samaria, right? You have verse 7, as for Samaria, her king is cut off. Verse 8, also the high places of Aven, the sin of Israel shall be destroyed. So, right, both Bethel and Samaria are located next to mountains. Mountains that are higher than Bethel and Samaria, right? So, fall on us, cover us. Well, I mean, obviously we know this is prophecy. It's not like everything has to be super literal, but geographically it lines up. This is where the map stuff comes into play a little bit, if you want to flip there. So first thing is sort of a map of kind of sort of the Assyrian conquest, although technically this is a map of the exile of the Israelites. Likely this is the same route that the Assyrians would have taken when they captured Samaria, just in reverse, I guess, because they're marching back to Assyria. So you have that. Okay, and then next page, your last page, is a topographical map of different mountains and their elevations in Israel. Okay, and you can see, I mean, it's the same, we're working with the same strip of land, basically. One is cropped a little bit differently, but we're working with the same strip of land here, okay? And I gave you a note that Samaria is, Mount Gerizim is slightly southeast of Samaria, and it's north of Bethel. And Bethel is just north of, that should say Jerusalem. It just says Jerusalem on my thing. You get the picture. So if you want to fill that in, you can, just for reference. Bethel is very close to Jerusalem, and it's south quite a ways of Mount Gerizim. So why am I bringing all this up? Why don't I got you with the Hebrew, I confused you there. Now I get you with the maps, I confuse you here, right? This is a quote from Albert Barnes, like 19th century pastor, commentator, and it's pretty good, I thought. It says, no help should those high places now bring to them in their need. The high hills around Samaria, when the tide of war had filled the valley around it, hemmed them in all the more hopelessly. Only one service could it seem that their mountains could then render, to destroy them, right? So yeah, you have the mountains around Samaria, around Bethel. Okay, you have, again, technically this is the route of the Israelites being deported, but, you can see on a map, where is Assyria, where is Israel, how would they have gotten here? They're passing through these mountains as they're coming to destroy Samaria and eventually exile Israelites back, right? So you're in Samaria, you're in Bethel, right? You're seeing, okay, I'm a little bit lower, geographically I'm a little bit lower, maybe I'm not in a valley, but, I'm hanging out in Samaria, I'm hanging out in Bethel, and there's a mountain over here, or there's a giant hill over here, right? And I just see these armies and armies just coming over the top of the mountain, right? I'm probably going to be praying that those mountains just fall and kill me too if I'm in that situation. So it makes sense, right? You can see, okay, if this is the route that the Assyrians took, they're passing by here, they're topping these mountains, okay, yeah, just I hope that these mountains crumble and take me now, right? And what's interesting is, right, I mean, these were the same high places used in their pagan worship, right? We're going to, either worship God, quote unquote, while doing all the things that you would be doing if you were worshiping Baal, or we're going to worship Baal doing all the things that you would be doing if you're worshiping God. Very mixed up, religion. And you're doing it on these high places. And now these high places, they're not going to do you any good. As, again, Albert Barnes put it, the only service that their mountains could then render would be to destroy them. High places could technically just be any place of a slightly higher elevation. So it doesn't even have to be a mountain or a hill. Just, a high place, right? The places at Walmart that they don't want you to reach without a ladder or without assistance, right? That could be your pagan high place. And it has its origin, obviously, in paganism, Canaanite culture. And Israel would often, when they, conquered or annexed formerly Canaanite territory, they just take over these high places and just continue the tradition of worshiping false gods on them. The exact same places that the Canaanites were using. Right? By the time you get to Hosea, right, these same places that were being used to worship some god, right, Baal, Yahweh, both, right. Soon, I mean, the only, they wouldn't be thought of as, they wouldn't be going to these places as, oh, I'm gonna pray to Baal, I'm gonna pray to Asherah, and hope that the Assyrian army will be stopped, right? No, the only good thing that these things are going to do is, maybe some earthquake will happen and they'll just fall on me. And this brings us to our fill in the blank for this. The only thing these places of high elevation could offer was death by falling on top of people. Right? The kings of Israel, they're going to be cut off. The religious centers of idolatry, they're going to be cut off, and nothing's going to be able to stop Assyria, right? They're coming whether you like it or not. So verse 9. Let me reread verse 9. O Israel, you have sinned from the days of Gibeah. There they stood. The battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity did not overtake them. So we have a reference to Gibeah. If you got a study Bible, this is probably footnoted, or there's like a note bringing you back to Judges 19 and or 20. This is a pretty long narrative. This is Judges 19 to the end of the book of Judges, 19 to 21. Technically, 19 is sort of all about this guy. He has a concubine. The concubine runs away. He goes to find the concubine, eventually gets her back. They're traveling back to their home in the mountains of Ephraim, I believe. And they stop for the night in Gibeah. And very similar to Sodom, a bunch of guys come knocking and they want to have sex, not with the female concubine, but with the guy that owns the concubine. And so he ends up sending out his concubine, and they rape her, and eventually she dies right on the doorstep of where this guy is staying on his way back home to the mountains of Ephraim. So that's basically 19. 20 is this very detailed description of this huge war that breaks out. You have all the other, 11 tribes, and they get together, and, they're mad at what the Benjamites did in Gibeah. So they're going to go up to, Gibeah, and they're going to get revenge. And so that's what happens. And then 21, they kind of have this problem where they almost committed an entire, genocide. I don't know that it would be called a genocide, technically speaking, but, you get the idea. They almost wiped out the entire tribe, basically. And they kind of have this problem of okay, well, we don't, because, they're all brothers, right? The 12 tribes, 12 sons. They're we don't want to kill them entirely, and we feel bad that we almost did. But there's no women left for them to marry, and we don't want their bloodline to die out. So what do we do about marrying them? And so, they have some people that didn't show up to this meeting, and they marry some of them up to them. And then their final solution is, hey, let's just go to these people. They got these girls that come out and they do a little dance. When the girls come out and do a little dance, just run in and grab them and then bring them back to Israel. And that's our solution to this problem that we made, right? It's a very long narrative. It's very crazy, and I probably did not do a great job of summarizing it, but go read it. It's very interesting. And so that's the whole reference to Gibeah, okay? And this is your fill in the blank thing. The biblical narrative of Gibeah in Judges 19 to 21 ends with Judges 21:25. Now you can either write Judges 21:25, or if you really, I guess, want to stretch it in there, the verse is this. This is the last book of the last verse of the entire book of Judges, by the way. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. All right. That is how the whole 3-chapter long narrative that began at Gibeah ends, and how the book of Judges ends. Kind of sad. What does this have to do with Hosea? Why is Hosea bringing this up? Why am I bringing this up? Well, excuse me. The sins of Israel in Hosea's time are being likened to, right, as now, so back then, to the sins of Israel in the time of the Judges. And the implication at the end of Judges 21 with that, Israel had no king, everyone did as they saw fit. The implication is that all of the craziness from that narrative, right? The rape of the concubine, the war that resulted from the rape of that concubine, the absolutely insane plot to find wives for the remaining Benjamites that they come up with, right? All of that craziness, right, happened at least partly because Israel didn't have a king. Israel didn't have somebody to lead them, to tell them, hey, maybe this isn't a great idea to almost wipe out an entire tribe, right? There was no one to step in and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. In Hosea's time, however, there are kings, and we read about the corruption of the kings of Israel and the prophecies of their downfall, right? I mean, we just read verse 7, as for Samaria, her king is cut off, right? So this is your fill in the blank, your last fill in the blank for verse 9. Even with a king, Israel is still wicked, right? Let me just get back into this. So, O Israel, verse 9, O Israel, you have sinned from the days of Gibeah. There they stood, or there you are standing, something like that. There they remain, I think, is basically how the NIV translates it. Probably the better translation, by the way, because again, the emphasis is as back then, so too now is the same thing happening. O Israel, you have sinned from the days of Gibeah. There you remain. The battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity did not overtake them. So, right, you didn't have a king, and y'all did one of the most insane things that has happened in y'all's history. And now y'all got a king, and y'all are doing even more insane stuff. Y'all are still crazy. This is another quote. It says, "If God punished Israel by war that time, will He not do it again?" Right? Because the whole, the entirety of chapter 20 of Judges is this humongous war that broke out as a result of this rape of a concubine that happened in Gibeah. And what's interesting is that in Judges 20, you have God actually approving of the war. So it kind of would get into this whole thing of you have God approving of and sort of leading this war. And also this war is sort of like divine judgment as well. But anyway, if God punished Israel with war back then, is He not also going to do the same thing now in Hosea's time? Right? Because once again, there they remain, as the NIV puts it, right? You're still in Gibeah, right? Talked about last week the whole Baal Peor thing with Gilgal, right? Flip back to chapter 9. This is chapter 9, verse 10, right? Hosea 9:10, sort of halfway in the verse. "But they went to Baal Peor and separated themselves to that shame. They became an abomination like the thing they loved. And then, as for Ephraim, their glory shall fly away. No birth, no pregnancy, no conception." So, right, talked about, okay, Israel was still at Peor. They were still worshiping Baal, right? Nothing had changed. And, I guess the judgment might change a little bit because there wasn't an exile last time, but they're still going to be judged for it. And it's the same thing here with this reference to Gibeah, right? Nothing has changed. Y'all are still corrupt. Y'all are still evil. And y'all are still going to be punished. Even punishment of war, right? Although this time, y'all, it ain't going to end up as good as it did in the book of Judges. Not that really ended up good either, but, it's a similar situation that they're going to find themselves in. So
does that mean the war they're in now is a punishment for their evil?
Are you talking in 2024?
Yes.
Well, goodness gracious. Okay. Couple things. So first of all, we can't know.
There's no prophets to tell us.
No. You can look at almost any major tragedy from just about any country in the last couple hundred years, and somebody's going to be saying this is judgment from God. I grew up in Hurricane Alley, and you had Katrina hit New Orleans, and all the people, I was in Texas, and they were like, "Oh, that's because New Orleans, they got all this, gambling, prostitution, witchcraft, whatever. And that's God's punishment." Well, then a year, maybe less later, Rita hit Beaumont, which is where I lived. No one was saying that was God's judgment at that time, right? So one, I don't think we can know. Two, I think how you answer that, to the best of your ability would depend on how you see the new covenant. Because, okay, if we're not under the law anymore, the Old Testament law, would the covenantal curses of that Old Testament law still apply? So, obviously in the New Testament, there is still judgment for sin, but a lot of the emphasis is placed on judgment in the afterlife. And so, on sort of this wide scale, an entire nation of people being judged sort of thing, would that still happen in the new covenant? And that's something that, again, do we really know? I don't know. that's probably as good of an answer as I can give on that. We don't really know. I mean, regardless of the intention behind it, obviously, I mean, any tragedy that strikes, you would hope anyway, people would be able to look at it and either turn to God or trust God more or something along those lines. So, whether it's specifically happening as a form of judgment or not, the hoped for result would be the same. In any case, whether that's Israel in 2024 or America in 2050 or Botswana in 1970, whatever, I don't know. The hoped for result would be that people would turn to God. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Verses 14 and 15. I will reread those. So, therefore tumult shall arise among your people, and all your fortresses shall be plundered. As Shalman plundered Beth Arbel in the day of battle, a mother dashed in pieces upon her children. Thus it shall be done to you, O Bethel, because of your great wickedness. At dawn the king of Israel shall be cut off utterly. So, and I'll try to do this quick because we are right at time. So, verses 14 to 15, you have mention of Shalman. No one really knows who this is, okay? Apparently in Hosea's time, he and whatever he did was pretty well known because no other context is given. So we've seen this before in the Minor Prophets. My brain is fried right now from talking for an hour. But the one that starts off talking about an earthquake, whichever one that one was, Joel maybe, we kind of mentioned that too, right? It was this like deal that was big enough that like everyone knew about it. You didn't have to really explain it. Kind of the same thing here, right? And there have been a lot of theories put forth. Okay, who is Shalman? What is this Beth Arbel, right, being spoken of? Because we don't know what that is either. Well, this is what I think and what other people have put forth that I think makes the most sense. But this is certainly not the only interpretation. Shalman is likely Shalmaneser the Fifth. So that is Shalmaneser the Fifth. That is the son of Tiglath-Pileser III. Talked a lot about him before. And what Tiglath-Pileser started, Shalmaneser ended, right? He's the guy who ultimately took Samaria and really kicked off the exile, on a large scale. So this would only be possible if we're dating this part of Hosea to shortly before the fall of Samaria. So, I mean, there is that you would have to take into account. As to Beth Arbel, where is this? What is this? Again, this is also unknown. This is what I think. Make of it what you will. This is likely, I have no idea how to pronounce this, but Irbid. I-R-B-I-D. Irbid, something like that. And then I believe, yes, there's a bracket of parentheses, and it says ancient. The ancient name for this would be Arbella. A-R-B-E-L-A. Arbella. All right. Sounds very similar to Arbel. Okay. You can see where we're going with this. And this was 10 miles from Jezreel. Okay. I'm going to read another quote from Albert Barnes. I have never really quoted from him before, I don't think. Maybe once or twice. But I think he really did us good on Hosea, chapter 10. This is good stuff. I don't know that this was intentional, but this is a very interesting quote. He says, Hosea, likely in the last years of his life, saw the fulfillment of his earlier prophecy. And then he quotes from chapter 1, verse 5, God broke the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Again, I don't know that that is like an intentional thing or even that that's necessarily the case, but I find it very interesting. You have here, again, likely the case, Beth Arbel is the ancient city of Arbela, or modern day Irbid, whatever. 10 miles from Jezreel, in the valley of Jezreel. Could it be a fulfillment of 1:5? Who knows? But you have this guy, Shalman, likely Shalmaneser V, does some pretty messed up stuff, it says. The description we have, plundered in the day of battle, a mother dashed in pieces upon her children. That's, absolutely terrible. And so how does this relate to verse 15? Because, verses 14 to 15 are related, as Shalman plundered and dashed, mothers into pieces or whatever, verse 15, thus it shall be done to you, O Israel. So how are they related? Besides the fact that it says, as it happened back then, it's going to happen again. Well, Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, cut off the king of Israel utterly, right? That is a historical fact. Your last blank there, it just says, see, write down 2 Kings 17, verses 3 and 4. 2 Kings 17, 3 and 4. Let me read that real quick. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up to attack Hosea, the final king of the northern kingdom, who had been Shalmaneser's vassal and paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria discovered that Hosea had been a traitor, for he had sent envoys to So, king of Egypt, and was no longer paying tribute to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore Shalmaneser seized him and put him in prison. And eventually he died. We don't really know how. So, you have verse 15. As this dude Shalman, as I'm arguing, likely Shalmaneser, took this place, Beth Arbel, and plundered it and did some pretty messed up stuff to women and children, it's going to happen to you, Bethel. Likely Beth, and Bethel, intentional wording there because they sound very similar. It's going to be done to you, Bethel, because of your great wickedness. And at dawn, the king of Israel shall be cut off utterly. Again, if we are taking Shalman as Shalmaneser, it's going to be done by the same dude, right? The same guy that took Arbela is going to take Samaria, is going to take Bethel, and is going to cut off the king of Israel. Very interesting. Finally, to summarize, neither their gods, verse 8 of chapter 10, nor their kings, verse 15 of chapter 10, could save Israel from their imminent destruction and exile. All right. Kind of already got into this with king being cut off in verse 7, the high places being cut off in verse 8. But again, verse 8, the high places of Avon, the sin of Israel, shall be destroyed. Verse 15, at dawn, the king of Israel shall be cut off entirely. Neither thing that you're looking to is going to be able to save you at all, right? These high places that I used to look for, I would go here and I would do a ritual for agricultural blessing, for economic blessing, for, to be able to have children or whatever, right? You're not going to be doing that anymore. And you might look to it to try to save you from Assyria, but it's going to be no good. And the only good it's going to be able to do you is if it fell and killed you, because Assyria is coming whether you like it or not. The king, right? We already know, even in the time of Hosea, a lot of turnover of kings, a lot of turnover of power. You're probably not looking to the king anyway for answers and for stability and for leadership. But even if it crossed your mind to do that, he's going to be cut off and you're not going to be able to do that. And Assyria is going to come and you're going to be exiled. So anyway, that is Hosea chapter 10. And that was a lot. So any other questions, I guess, before we get into the prayer time? or anything that I want to repeat, because I have a key. If anyone missed anything, that we can pass out, or I can just repeat it.
I got all of them.
I didn't.
Which
I always
one?
miss one.
Which one?
I know that. They're probably the second paragraph earlier we saw, and then drop down to now in verse 5 we see the prophet describe the
Golden calf
I thought I missed that.
of Bethel, and then the second one is
Exile.
used to describe the exile of humans. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Always miss one.
Okay. The prayer requests. Lester printed them out. Did everyone get one?
Yes,
Yes.
I did.
Okay. And he marked on mine specifically what to go over, so I don't have to take a guess this time. What is not on here, or if it is, he did not put a mark on it, is Lester. Obviously, pray for him. Doing double duty, recovering from the back surgery and the heart attack. He was here earlier, like half an hour or so before we started, and he should be anyway, relaxing. We have one viewer. I don't know if that's Lester or not. I would not be surprised. If he doesn't view it now, I'm sure he'll view it at some other point. Hopefully taking it easy. He needs rest. So yeah, keep him in your prayers. And I'm covering Sunday morning. I was going to do that anyway because of the back surgery. And then Sunday night, as I have already said, we're not doing because of the holiday, Memorial Day. And following Monday or Sunday night, I will cover. And I haven't gotten a word on like a week and a half from now, Sunday morning, if I'm doing that or not. But yeah, he's getting a lot of much needed R&R. So pray that through all of that, the recovery process would be, smooth and swift, and effective. Yes. Sorry. In addition to that, we have should be at the top Kent Jensen's daughter Adrian. That's the one that had the double mastectomy surgery, and Lester said couldn't hardly raise her arms. So, yeah.
That's normal.
Yeah. So, I've never actually broken any bone in my body. I'm very blessed that is the case. Certainly never broken anything in any of my hands or arms. But I cannot even imagine like having limited to no use over both of my arms. Like that just sounds like an absolute nightmare. So yeah, keep her in your prayer. Nicholas O'Connor.
He's doing just about the same. He just has a difficult time letting his food be useful to his body.
Yeah. And see, how old is he?
18.
Yeah. See, when I was 18, I had difficulty letting food be useful to my body because all I ate was Taco Bell. And that's not exactly a very nutritious meal. Frank Evans is the next one that he has highlighted. It says he's back in the hospital with fluid on the lungs. He gave me an update on this, I think, while he was here. That's separate from what's on the page, but I cannot for the life of me remember what that is. But definitely keep him in your prayers. Langdon Smith is highlighted. Talked to him, I think it was Monday, but just goofing around. We didn't really talk anything serious. But yeah, last thing I heard that was of any serious is like he's in language school and making good grades and doing there and still, doing evangelism and passing out Bibles and starting churches. And so he's a busy guy. So keep him in your prayers. Kathy Williams with her eyes. And also her knee should be on here as well. Doing good, I guess.
Yes, She was supposed to start some other physical therapy. I'm not sure when. Sometime this week, I believe, on her knees.
Okay. Pray that all that goes good. We have the two wars, Israel and Gaza and Ukraine, Russia. Yeah, we actually talked about that a little bit earlier. And yeah, here's the thing. I mean, if you really want to think about it, this is unscripted. If you really want to think about it, right? Every war that happens is a judgment. Just maybe not necessarily directly from God, right? Because why do we have war in the first place? Because of our sin, right? Our inability to do things God's way, our inability to get along and not kill each other. So, right, I mean, any war is judgment in a sense, maybe just not directly from God. And so, right, everyone sins, okay? Israel sins, Palestinians, Gaza sins, Ukraine sins, Russia sins, right? Whatever war you want to apply this to, right? And both people suffer, right? Again, there are really no winners in war. There's just people that come out slightly ahead. So yeah, definitely pray for everyone involved. That is the Christian thing to do. I'm not like advocating necessarily that like you can't have any political dog in like any war ever. But yeah, you definitely don't want to intertwine your politics with your faith so much to the point that you're not also praying for your enemy, because Jesus told us that we need to do that. So yeah, everyone involved, it's a terrible deal. The unspoken requests are highlighted. Any more or the same ones?
Same.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. Jack Strabb is highlighted. We haven't really had an update on him in a long time. Yeah.
Tom Hicks was our contact there. I'll have to get up on her.
Okay.
See if she's heard anything.
Janet Coates is highlighted. Is that the one that the text was about the other day?
I'm not sure.
So it says here, going to be moved to OKC, has about 2 months to live. When Lester was over here earlier, told me the doctors basically told him we've done everything we can. So yeah, those are not really words that you want to hear. So yeah, be with her and that family. I mean, yeah, always a rough time when you've only got so much time left. In some ways, maybe harder than if you just didn't know at all, especially for the family.
My oldest daughter and I are going up to see my brother tomorrow, so I'll have a report for that later.
Okay. Let me see. Roseanne Anderson, with the colon cancer. Lester said she had like 6 different treatment procedures done.
Where are you seeing that?
Right under
Oh,
Adam
I see.
Peters.
Okay. Gotcha.
So pray for that. And then Al Casto and Austin Clinton are the last 2 that are highlighted. And I don't guess that there's any other update than what's on there. So anyway, anything else that's come up in the last week or that you want to highlight that maybe we didn't get to?
Well, you weren't here for the birthday party, but Kevin and Christy were, and both of them were positively glowing.
Yeah.
Expecting that baby in September.
Yeah, we got like 6 pregnancies of
My 2 of my pregnant granddaughters were here, Cheyenne and Sydney. They're both doing very. Just keep praying for them.
Yeah.
Probably going to induce Anna's labor the 12th of June.
Okay. Man, that's coming up.
Yeah. She's the next one.
All right. Well, if that is it, then I will pray and we will be dismissed. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for the chance to get together and read your word, and even for the chance to ask tough questions that maybe, we don't know the answer to because we're not you, and that's a good thing. But we do take a lot of comfort in the fact that you are all-knowing and all-loving, and everything that happens you know about and you're in control of. And we just pray that, whether on a personal scale, people that we know or in our own lives, or even on a global scale with, wars and politics, just pray that people would turn to you through whatever happens. And that for those of us who already know you, that we would see the chaos and the hardships as an opportunity to get closer to you. Because you're the only one who's unchanging. And so when everything falls apart, you're the only one that we can turn to, and we take comfort in that. Just be with these people that we have been praying for, and the people that we pointed out. And we just pray that you be with the ones who are recovering from different surgeries or different procedures that have been done. Kathy and Lester and others. And we just pray that they would take it easy and recover, and maybe get just some rest and a little bit of a break if they need it. We pray for those who maybe they're at the end of their life, and especially for the families of those people, that you would comfort them in these last few months or days. And we pray for those people who are about to bring new life into this world, not only during these months leading up to birth, but that even after birth, that they would raise their children knowing you and loving you, and that we as a church would take these mothers and fathers and kids, and that we would reach them and teach them and just show them your love, God. And all these things, we love you, and we are thankful for just the ways that you bless us, allowing us to worship you, allowing us to pray to you, and for your grace, God, that forgives us, even though, like the Israelites, sometimes we are still doing the same things we've been doing for years. But we thank you for your grace and your love, and we pray that you would help us move beyond our sin and make us more like you every single day. We love you, Lord, and we ask all this in Jesus'